Hello lovelies, today we're going to be taking a look at the Phantasy Star tabletop role-playing game. Now, my first encounter with Phantasy Star was with Phantasy Star Online on the Nintendo GameCube. Criminally underrated console, in my opinion. But also one you couldn't get a modem for in the UK for love nor money when I had it. The game was alive with potential, and certainly influenced me with some residual influence presence in things like Machinations of the Space Princess. I haven't done a great deal of overt science fiction or sci-fi fantasy, but Phantasy Star Online has always been in the back of my mind. So I was quite excited about the prospect of a Phantasy Star TTRPG, given my recent obsession with Japanese games and Japanese-influenced games and so on. I mean, here's the blurb, right, from their page. The Phantasy Star Tabletop RPG is a cooperative storytelling game where you and your friends take on the roles of heroic protagonists in a boundless universe based on the popular Phantasy Star video game series. Gather your party of galactic heroes and embark on quests to explore and safeguard the galaxy from cosmic threats, tyrannical empires, and ancient evils. Build a diverse cast of characters using your favourite archetypes such as hunters, rangers, mystics, and more. Forge a hero of your own design or play legendary personas such as Alice Landale, Rolf, Lutz, or Chaz Ashley. Weave amazing stories where your valiant explorers blast off to new worlds and battle mythical and technological menaces. Create adventures in iconic regions such as the Algol star system, or create your own worlds and tales of cosmic fantasy. This game is powered by Esper Genesis, a comprehensive sci-fi role-playing rules system that you can use to build, customize and expand your game, with the only limit being your imagination. Included in the book is a galactic lore chapter with illustrations, a detailed timeline, and an expanded lore of the Phantasy Star storyverse. Lies. Lies and treason. There is nothing cooperative about the game that's not... It's just not there. It's not a design focus, it's not a mechanical aspect to the game. Any more than any other RPG, there is nothing that particularly rewards cooperative behaviour or combinations between characters. The universe information is extremely scant. This is an all-in-one book, capping out at 225 pages, while covering system, GM advice, world lore, and a bestiary all within that space, so it's quite cramped. Are there stats for classic characters from the games? Only in the barest, most threadbare sense possible, so no. What is the Esper Genesis system? Well, it's just 5th edition, with less tweaks for genre emulation than yet another J-Random Beck Me clone for the OSR. Is there expanded lore? As I find myself saying all too often, not really, and you're better off raiding the Phantasy Star wikis to be found online rather than using this as a resource. And for me, for a lot of games, RPGs were often resource books for the background and information and so on the worlds that they're drawing from. Like even the Sailor Moon RPG was better at describing the world of the series and, you know, episode guides and everything than this is. So this is the biggest disappointment since discovering that Eccentrica Golumbitz, the triple-breasted whore of Eroticon 6, padded her bra. Most of the system is going to be familiar, but here's the notable tweaks. You have a thing called fate points. You can spend these to add a bonus to an attack roll, save, or a skill check. That's usually a d6 die, so it's a limited resource of limited application. You can also spend 2 of those points to roll with advantage, and during a rest, you can spend 1 to boost your hit point or technique point recovery. You can also spend one to automatically succeed on a single death save once you're dying, biasing things even more in your favour of surviving. And that's about it, system-wise, though there's some more tweaks in character creation and some implications and so on. But largely, if you know 5e, either version, then 99% you know Espergenesis, which has changed so little it doesn't deserve its own name. We do have an inevitable faint-hearted paragraph about safety and checking up with your players before the content. In character creation there are some minor diversions. Ability scores are gotten rid of, which probably should happen in the next edition of D&D, to be honest, replaced with just the bonuses and penalties. However, they're shrunk, so they run from -1 to +2 at character generation, and modifiers can only take you as high as +3. At least at the start. That's compressed from 5e's normal -4 to +4 range, and has and its upper limit of +5, but it will be familiar to those from the old school of gaming. You'll be rolling a d10 to determine these if you're not point buying or assigning a standard array, so there's no bell curve, it's flat. 1 to 2 is -1, 3 to 4 is 0, 5 to 7 is +1, 8 to 10 is +2, so gives you some idea. Techniques replace magic, and they're powered by technique points, but really it's just magic, so fighty hitty types still largely miss out on access to that sort of thing. In terms of species or race, you've got androids, humans, Newmans, Dazolians, Matavians, and Muskcats for your inner snarf. I, again, showing my bias from where I first encountered Phantasy Star, prefer the names that were to be found in Phantasy Star online. Again, your mileage may vary. Races don't influence statistics, but they may well influence other things, such as proficiencies or technique points or whatever else. Backgrounds divert from D&D 2024 by, again, not giving you stat bonuses, but rather skills, gear proficiencies, and your starting equipment. Profession-wise, we have Guardians, which are defensive fighters, paladin style, good all-rounder. Hunters, which are explorers and trackers, bit of an all-rounder again, with a different focus, not exactly rangers, but close. Mystics, which are a monk analogue, crossed a little bit with a cleric. Operatives, which are rogue analogues. Savants, who wield techniques like a wizard while being dressed like a scientist. And thaumaturges, who go full mystic without pretending to be scientists. And then, lastly, warriors, who get no techniques but are full-on tanks. I talk often about the dissatisfaction I feel towards games that don't make allowances for doing cool shit. You know, I hit it with my axe. It's boring and repetitive and not particularly engaging. So, good news, Phantasy Star allows for stunts. Bad news, they're class gated to warriors and the commando subclass, and in such a way that there isn't a neat house rule substitution that you can do. Maybe you could allow anyone to try a stunt but have to spend a fate point and add that in place of the stunt die that the warrior commando gets, but that doesn't feel right to me. Gear is rather shallow. You have basic items which are then ranked from level 0 common to level 4 epic. There's some half-assed additional rules for named/legendary items too, but it's not much. Weapons have a damage rating, a range, special properties, an unlockable mastery ability, and that's about it. A rifle does a whole woohoo d10 damage, d10 plus 4 if it's an epic rifle. For comparison, the rank 1 technique Barta, B-A-R-T-A, does 1d10 damage, same as a rifle, and the possibility of another 2d6. Sure, it's limited by technique points, but you can see how warriors using weapons will feel a little bit miffed. You do get to add your ability modifiers to the weapon damage as well, but when there's techniques that can heal 700 hit points in one go, and CR1 creatures can have as many as 30 hit points, it doesn't really seem like much of a difference. Could you fix that? Maybe. You could possibly allow weapon mastery or proficiency to step up the damage dice from your weapons. So, D4 becomes a D6, D6 becomes a D8, D10 becomes a D12, D12 becomes 2D8, 2D8 becomes 2D10. You know how it goes. Starfinder kind of did that better with their scaling weaponry, but you could do it even better with scaling damage according to the skill of whoever is using the weapon, right? I didn't see any mags, the little floating robots from PSO, which upsets me. They were cute and I liked them. Casting Techniques is a spell point system, which is, of course, much better than Vancian magic. But the names of the spells are jarring. Mind you, I found that with PSO as well. Hard to remember what these things do when they're not called like Ice Bolt and instead have some weird name that makes zero sense. You can cast techniques at higher rank by spending more technique points if you want, so you can boost the effect. And there's also a capacity to do combination techniques, and you can also limit breach like a limited number of times. So you could cast at a higher level or cast a technique that you don't have enough technique points for by exhausting your own body to kind of strain yourself and use physical fuel for the ability. But yeah, it's a nice little touch. The Bestiary reflects Phantasy Star's legacy as a weird JRPG. A lot of the creatures don't make a lot of sense necessarily, but when you've got to populate an entire console game with critters, then you delve into the weirder things. Fortunately, there are creature/NPC creation rules, which probably reflects the star-spanning nature of the game. And there's a quick look-up table for it for speedy NPCs. Right, here it is, coincidentally enough. And that works great, because this is GM-facing, not player-facing. So they don't know you're just reading off a line and pulling the rest out of your ass. But that works fine. That works great. And you can get away with it in most games, even complicated ones. So that's something that should be in more games, I think. Vehicle and starship rules are scant and deeply unsatisfying, but that was never a focus of the console games, so in a way, that's fine. The world lore, the much vaunted world lore, is under 30 pages, so it's a very small portion of the book and doesn't really tell you anything you can't find elsewhere put better and more completely, so that's hugely disappointing. The layout is clean but depressingly 5e oriented again. The artwork is also somewhat disappointing. They've made a clear choice in a lot of the art that they've chosen to hark back to the 80s style of the original console games, which is okay, I guess. I can live with that. But there is a lot of concept art from all the games, including the more modern ones, that could have been used and hasn't been. There's no robot fetish maid or nurse, which is very disappointing. So yeah, the artwork harks back to the offline first couple of games, the oldest ones, and the rest is filled in with substandard and disappointing art that doesn't maintain the same look and feel, and often looks unmistakably Western. There's no real excuse for this. We have a glut of anime-inspired artists, but much like the new Heavy Gear and its lack of udon, this is just disappointing, especially since PSO had and has such a strong visual hook to it. Even AI art would have been better, especially since it seems to be particularly good at producing anime images that pass muster. See Tales of Crystallia, which I reviewed somewhat recently. Alright then, so style 2. The layout is fine, but what really lets it down is it doesn't live up to a game series with such a strong visual style and emphasis. It's meh, but the disappointing drops it to a 2. Substance wise, technically everything is here. that you need in order to play, but there is almost nothing in terms of added value. The system is just 5e. The lore chapter is scant and unfulfilling. It's just, again, disappointing. So in terms of substance, technically there's a whole game here, but this needed to be more. So I am going to exercise my subjective judgment and drop it from a 3, which is normally my standard, is there a whole game here? I'm going to drop it to 2, because you have to do more when you're doing a tie-in game like this. You have to offer more added value. Otherwise, this is just house rules that I could have knocked up in an afternoon. Quite frankly. So substance 2. So that is 4 out of 10. That is 2 out of 5. Deeply disappointing, profoundly meh. I think it's only worth getting if you're a super fan. Otherwise, if you want to do science fantasy, you've got options. Starfinder First Edition would be quite good. I don't know about Starfinder Second Edition yet. And other options exist. D6 Space is obviously suitable to science fantasy because it was used for Star Wars back in the day. My own machinations obviously handle science fantasy quite well, and yeah, there's other options out there that are much better than mildly house ruled 5e. Zang.
"Rrrr," said the grinder as it chewed its way through Alice, from the crown of her head all the way down to her toes. It ate the lot of her, unfussy, snout to tail, and cleared its plate. It gnashed its way through her dress, her pinafore, her shoes, and her unmentionables. It chewed her hair, devoured her scalp, gobbled up her arms, wolfed down her legs, gorged itself on her torso, noshed on her skin, and gulped her down without so much as a burp to show for it.